So my first question, Mr. Pichai, is why does Google steal content from honest businesses?
Mr. Chairman, with respect, I disagree with that characterization. Just last week, I met with many small businesses. In fact, today we support 1.4 million small businesses, supporting over $385 billion in economic activity. We see many businesses thrive, particularly even during the pandemic. Businesses, an example, Kettle Kings in Texas, which sells kettlebells. They've really
Mr. Pichai,
expanded.
I have a limited amount of time, so I don't want to interrupt you, but my question is very specific. We heard throughout this investigation that Google has stolen content to build your own business. These are consistent reports, and so your testimony that doesn't happen is really inconsistent with what we've learned during the course of the investigation, but I'll move on to a new question. Mr. Pichai, most Americans believe that when they enter a search query that what Google shows are the most relevant results. But increasingly, Google just shows whatever is most profitable for Google, be it Google Ads or Google's own sites. And so my question, Mr. Pichai, isn't there a fundamental conflict of interest between serving users who want to access the best and most relevant information and Google's business model, which incentivizes Google to sell ads and keep users on Google's own sites?
We've always focused on providing users the most relevant information, and we rely on that trust for users to come back to Google every day. In fact, a vast majority of queries in Google, we don't show ads at all, and we show ads only for a small subset of queries where the intent from users is highly commercial.
It was reported that Donald Trump Jr. got taken down for a period of time because he put something up on the efficacy of hydroxychloroquine. Now, I wouldn't take it myself, but there still is a debate on whether it is effective either in treating or preventing COVID-19. And I think that this is a legitimate matter of discussion, and it would be up to a patient and their doctor to determine whether hydroxychloroquine was the correct medication given the circumstances. Now, why did that happen?
Congressman, well, first, to be clear, I think what you might be referring to happened on Twitter, so it's hard for me to speak to that, but I can talk to our policies about this. We do prohibit content that will lead to imminent risk of harm, and stating that there's a proven cure for COVID when there is in fact none might encourage someone to go take something that could have some adverse effects. So we do take that down. We do not prohibit discussion around trials of drugs or people saying that they think that things might work or personal experiences with experimental drugs. But if someone is going to say that something is proven when in fact it is not, that could lead people
wouldn't that be up for somebody on the other side of the issue to say that this is not proven? And, I know as a fact that, for people with certain conditions, it's contraindicated and they shouldn't take it on that. But wouldn't that be up to somebody else, to say, okay, what somebody posted on this really isn't true, and here's what the facts are, rather than having a Twitter or a Facebook take it down?
Congressman, in general, I agree with you, and we do not want to become the arbiters of truth. I think that would be a bad position for us to be in, and not what we should be doing. But on specific claims, if someone is going to go out and say that hydroxychloroquine is proven to cure COVID, when in fact it has not been proven to cure COVID, and that statement could lead people to take a drug that in some cases, some of the data suggests that it might be harmful to people, we think that we should take that down. That could cause imminent risk of harm.
Okay, thank you. I yield back.
Mr. Bezos, in July 2019, your employee, Nate Sutton, told me under oath in this committee that Amazon does not, quote, use any specific seller data when creating its own private brand product. So let me ask you, Mr. Bezos, does Amazon ever access and use third-party seller data when making business decisions? And just a yes or no will suffice, sir.
I thank you for the question. I know it's an important topic, and I also want to thank you for representing us. I can't answer that question yes or no. What I can tell you is we have a policy against using seller-specific data to aid our private label business, but I can't guarantee you that that policy has never been violated.
Mr. Bezos, you're probably aware that an April 2020 report in the Wall Street Journal revealed that your company does access data on third-party sellers, both by reviewing data on popular individual sellers and products and by creating tiny product categories that allowed your company to categorically access detailed seller information in a supposedly aggregate category. Do you deny that report?
I'm familiar with the Wall Street Journal article that you're talking about, and we continue to look into that very carefully. I'm not yet satisfied that we've gotten to the bottom of it, and we're going to keep looking at it.
Okay.
It's not as easy to do as you would think because some of the sources in the article are anonymous, but we continue to look into it.
I'll take that as you're not denying that, you're looking into it. I will tell you a former Amazon employee in third-party sales and recruitment told this committee, quote, "There's a rule, but there's nobody enforcing or spot checking. They just say, don't help yourself to the data. It's a candy shop. Everyone can have access to anything they want." Do category managers have access to non-public data about third-party products and businesses?
Here's what I can tell you. We do have certain safeguards in place. We train people on the policy. We expect people to follow that policy the same way we would any other. It's voluntary policy, as far as I'm aware.
So there's no actual
data at all.
enforcement. There's no actual enforcement of that policy. So it's voluntary and there's no actual enforcement. So maybe that answers my.
Sorry. No, I think I may have misspoke. I'm trying to say that the fact that we have such a policy is voluntary. I think no other retailer even has such a policy.
Mr. Pichai, I'd like to start with you, and I'm just going to illustrate my question with a factual incident that actually occurred to me. Several months ago, my wife called and said, "Hey, there's a good article on the Gateway Pundit that you should read." So out of curiosity, I was up here in Washington. Out of curiosity, I Googled Gateway Pundit. And it didn't show up on the first page, didn't show up on the second page. There was a bunch of different blogging sites about how there were disagreements with what was on the Gateway Pundit. But I actually had to type in gatewaypundit.com to get to it. Interestingly, Google didn't allow me to get to the actual website. That was a couple of months ago, before this hearing was set to be heard, before this hearing was noticed, before you knew that you would be appearing before us today, and that this is an issue that obviously conservatives and Republicans have had. Last week, after this hearing was noticed, I did the exact same thing here in the Capitol. And wouldn't you know it, I Googled Gateway Pundit, and that was the very first website that came up. Now, this isn't from a constituent in my district. This isn't from somebody telling me. This isn't a news report. I actually physically did this on my laptop here in the Capitol several months ago and then today. So clearly, something had happened between not being notified that you were going to be appearing before our committee and then last week knowing that you would be appearing before our committee, and suddenly conservative websites are now at the top of the bar when you search for them. So was there anything done at Google between a couple of months ago and last week or the week before you appearing today that has changed your approach to silencing conservative websites?
Congressman, we approach our work with a deep sense of responsibility, in a nonpartisan way. We want to serve all our users, no matter where they are. In fact, it's in our long-term business incentive to do so. And I believe on our platforms, including YouTube, there are more conservative voices than ever before, and we believe in freedom of expression. On the specific issue, I will have to look into it. I obviously wasn't aware of it. We do. It could be a number of reasons. We constantly get reports.
So if you're going to look into it for me, can I expect a response from you, say, in the next 2 weeks as to why that occurred?
Congressman, we'll do our best to follow up, and I'll engage with your office to respond.
We'll follow up on that. I've got a similar question. So I've been in elected politics for almost 10 years. And when I was in the Florida Senate and the state Senate, I never had a problem with my campaign emails being marked as spam or going to junk folders or anything along those lines. And we had 30, 40, 50,000 people on our email list. And suddenly I get elected to Congress and I'm now up here in Washington, D.C., and my parents who have a Gmail account aren't getting my campaign emails. My supporters, just last week, one of my supporters called me and said, hey, I just want you to know this, that my Gmail account suddenly is taking your campaign emails that I've received for almost 10 years, and suddenly they're going to spam and junk folders. This appears to only be happening to conservative Republicans. I don't see anything in the news or anything in the press or other members on the other side of the aisle talking about their campaign emails getting thrown into junk folders in Gmail. So my question is why is this only happening to Republicans? And it's a fact, it's happening because I can have my supporters testify that they've received my emails for 9 years, and suddenly this last year, all of their Gmail, my campaign emails in their Gmail are going to their spam folder. So if you could give me some clarification on that, I would appreciate it.
In Gmail, we are focused on what users want, and users have indicated they want us to organize their personal emails they receive from friends and family separately. And so all we have done is we have a tabbed organization, and the primary tab has emails from friends and family, and the secondary tab has other notifications and so on. These things
Okay, well,
are applied,
it was my father who was not receiving now my campaign emails. So clearly that familial thing that you're talking about didn't apply to my emails.
Our systems probably are not able to understand that that it's your father. Obviously, we don't have that context there. We just apply it neutrally across all organizations
Well, what assurances can you give me that there's my time's short. One last question. What assurances can you give me that any bias amongst your employees isn't influencing your spam folder algorithms?
Congressman, there's nothing in the algorithm which has anything to do with political ideology, and we do get complaints across the aisle. For example, the World Socialist Review complained in January of this year that their site wasn't found in Google search results, and so we get complaints. We look into it, but we approach our work in a nonpartisan way, and it's in our long-term incentive to serve users across the country. And today, that's why we invest in our radars in 49 states across the U.S. so that we can capture all viewpoints.